great and our next governor of this state of North Carolina, Pat McCrory. And he's going to answer all the right questions.
That's the best introduction I've had all year. You know, y'all have given me such a warm welcome since I just walked in the door and came into Asheville just a few minutes ago. But one of the most unique comments I got, and I got to let you know what this comment was while walking around the tables right before I came up to the podium. One individual in the audience, he shall remain nameless, I'm pointing at him. He said, you know, there's only one thing I've ever disliked about you, Pat. And I said, what's that? And he said, well, you remind me of my ex-wife's ex-husband. I didn't know how to respond. You know, it's kind of interesting too. I've been spending a lot of time in the West during the past several months, and I was up above Boone, right at the Tennessee border, a couple days ago, and we were right at a mountaintop. In fact, at a cabin, log cabin, which there was a one-way dirt road to get there for 2.5 miles. One way, by the way. When another car comes the other direction, it's a game of chicken on who backs up. And but I got there, and we had a wonderful band and a wonderful event at this beautiful, beautiful oversight looking further west toward the Tennessee border. And I was walking around, and I asked one guy, I said, now, did you grow up around here? He said, yes, sir, I did grow up right around here. In fact, I've only been out of state twice. One of them was to Tennessee, and the other time I went to Charlotte. So I'm collecting these quotes throughout the campaign trail that I'm enjoying. I've got two of the best ones in the West. Listen, these are very, very serious times. In fact, just a few minutes ago, the new unemployment statistics came out for the state of North Carolina. And I'm sad to report that our unemployment is still the 4th highest in the nation. The 4th highest in the nation. And in fact, we are now the state in which we have the 40th straight month in which our unemployment rate is over 9% in the state of North Carolina. The 40th straight month in which our unemployment rate is over 9% in the state of North Carolina. The only states we're beating right now in unemployment figures is Rhode Island, Nevada, and California. That's it. This is not the North Carolina that I remember growing up. As I grew up in Jamestown, North Carolina, went to college in Salisbury, North Carolina, got a job in Charlotte, and became a leader. I remember North Carolina from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s through the 2000s where there was no state ahead of North Carolina in anything. And the reason I'm running for governor is we're going to make North Carolina #1 again. And it's not going to be an unemployment, it's going to be unemployment. And I come from business. I've been a business person for 30 years. And I'm proud of my business background. And I think there's an attack on business right now from the Washington and out of Raleigh. And we need to become more business friendly in North Carolina. And one thing I try to do is I try to pick the brains of people who've succeeded in business, both small and large companies. And I remember several years ago, I met a top CEO of one of the top 10 companies in the United States of America. And I asked him the following question, and it was a very direct question. I said, why has your company moved from #1 to #2 against your competition during the last 2 years? And he said, Mayor, that's a great question. Let me tell you what happened to us. Inside our headquarters, we were all turned inward, depending that our brand would survive the ups and downs of the economy. And we're going to live off of our brand. And in the meantime, we're going to turn inward and worry about who gets what office, who gets what title, who gets what promotions, who gets the blame, who gets the credit, and we have all these internal turf battles within our company. And while we were turned inward talking to each other, our customer was leaving us, and we didn't even know it. I don't care what business you're in, if you turn your back to the customer will leave you, or your competition will take your customer. And I've never forgotten that story, because I think it reflects on what's happened in North Carolina government and leadership during the past decade. Under the leadership, especially out of the executive branch during the past decade. And that is this. I think inside the Beltline in Raleigh, we've had the current leadership, the past leadership for the past decade, turn inward and basically living off the great brand of North Carolina and assuming that brand would carry us forever. While there were internal bickerings of Republicans against Democrats, the House against the Senate, the legislature against the governor, and it seems as though everyone against small and large business alike. In fact, during that time, they increased the income tax, they increased the gas tax, they increased the sales tax, they increased the corporate tax. And what was happening while they were all turned inward, bragging about how great North Carolina is, and it is great, the problem was other states were changing and recognizing we're going to take action toward North Carolina. We're going to try to beat them in economic development. They were showing leadership, and that's been happening during the past 3 years. You know, I meet with Governor Christie of New Jersey. He came in 2009, and by the way, when you meet Governor Christie, he's everything you see. But you know, he made a commitment when he got elected is, listen, New Jersey is falling off of a cliff right now. Our unemployment's too high, business is leaving to other states, and we have far too high taxes. He cut the tax rate, he started communicating to businesses, seeing what they needed, and he cut some of the bureaucracy and had more efficient government. And guess what? Right now we have a higher unemployment rate than New Jersey, right here in North Carolina. Surely, if they can do it in New Jersey, we can do it in North Carolina. I'm being very upfront with you. This is our competition across the United States and across the world. Nikki Haley in South Carolina. I meet with Nikki Haley. And right now they have beat North Carolina in several big economic development battles for new companies coming to North Carolina. And here North Carolina and the current governor and the past governor give all this upfront cash, begging a company to come to North Carolina, while South Carolina has a long-term economic development plan, primarily having lower corporate taxes and lower income taxes, which companies can look at the long-term value over 10 or 20 or 30 years. And guess where the companies are going right now? They can go right across the border to South Carolina. And that can impact Wilmington, to Charlotte, to Asheville. Or they can go right over to Tennessee, where Bill Haslam, good friend of mine, former mayor of Knoxville, Tennessee, is now governor. And I'm telling you right now, they're trying to do everything they can to build a business base, and that includes stealing customers from right across the border in North Carolina. I know this as a mayor because during my 14 years as mayor of Charlotte, I looked at what my competition was doing, and my goal was to beat the competition, especially in job creation. And you don't just beat them by taking business from elsewhere. The way you beat them is to work with your existing customers and get them to grow. You know that as a small business person. You spend more time getting your current customer to grow your business, their business, as opposed to getting new customers. You do both, but you don't avoid your existing customer or take them for granted or turn your back to them. And I think that's what we've done in North Carolina government. Bobby Jindal in Louisiana right now, 39-year-old governor. When he got elected, he said, I'm going to end this corruption in Louisiana politics. We're embarrassed about being the butt of jokes about the corruption in Louisiana. We know those jokes in Louisiana, right? In a short 4 years, and he was just reelected with over 80% of the vote, Louisiana is no longer known for corruption in state government. In fact, they're becoming a very tough economic development recruiter in Louisiana. Surely, if they can do it in Louisiana, we can do it in North Carolina. Because North Carolina has so much to offer, from the mountains to the Piedmont to the coast. We have unlimited resources that we have to unleash, but it takes a governor to show the vision and strategy to get there on how we're going to unleash those resources and how we're going to put North Carolina back to work again. We've had that in the past among both Republican and Democratic governors in the past. But we have not had it in the past decade. And now more than anything, I think it's going to take an outsider to come into Raleigh and shake things up, cut through the bureaucracy, cut down on the waste, look at our corporate and income taxes, and how we can make North Carolina more business friendly is going to be crucial to our economic survival here in this state. And let me just tell you a few of the things I want to do as your next governor. And it's going to be a battle between now and November to make that happen. The first thing we need to do is get North Carolina into the energy business. We've wasted at least 4 to 5 years sitting on the sidelines while other states look for gas exploration and oil exploration. While Pennsylvania, New York, Ohio, the Dakotas, and even Virginia is looking on how we can do exploration both offshore and inland to create jobs, but to also participate in the energy independence of our country. And you in Asheville know more than ever, when there's a gas crisis, you get hit first with high gas prices and long lines. I've been in your lines. I've seen the gas prices up there. When the line's disturbed coming up from Louisiana, you get hit first. We ought to participate in the energy independence of our country right here in North Carolina and create jobs. And right now, our current governor and, yes, lieutenant governor have sat on the sidelines on the issues, formed committees, formed commissions. It's time for action. Action which allows both exploration, but also action at the same time in which you have good environmental and regulation, ensure we know how the money's going to be spent, and we do it safely and wisely. We could have been doing this for the past 4 to 6 years, but we didn't. As your next governor, I'm going to work with Nikki Haley, our competition, and Governor McDonald in Virginia, and Bill Haslam in Tennessee, and go, how can we form a Southeast coalition and convince Washington to also get off their rear ends and get us into the energy business? This is extremely important. It takes action. The second thing that I think is very important, and I'm hearing especially from small businesses, is regulations. And the sad news, a lot of these regulations are coming from Washington. In fact, there's a regulation that's being debated in the Supreme Court right now as we speak, and it will be the biggest news story in the United States in the next 2 weeks when the Supreme Court rules on Obamacare. The sad news is during this national health care crisis and the largest legislation that our nation has ever seen, our governor and her administration sat on the sidelines and refused to challenge the national health care system and refused to communicate with the people of North Carolina on what the alternatives might be and also what the impact on our Medicaid and Medicare and small businesses would be. And there's a tremendous impact on it right now. I know businesses, small businesses in North Carolina that have told me they are growing, they want to grow, but they refuse to go over 70 employees because then they'd have to be pulled into the Obamacare system. And yet our governor and our state stands on the sidelines and let others fight our battle. That is not the leadership we deserve with regard to regulations. And there are a lot of state and local regulations that overlap each other and are literally making small businesses, some with only 70 to 100 people, have 3 or 4 people on their staffs just to deal with regulations. We need a serious effort coming out of state government to go, what are the regulations that make sense? What are the regulations that we have on our books that are just creating work for government? And which ones are going to have long-term impact on the future of North Carolina's economy? We need some serious questions in this area. We cannot live off of our past brand. As in any business, we constantly need to change our brand and see what the competition is doing. The third thing I want to briefly talk about is this, and that's education. I have a passion for education. I got my teaching degree from Catawba College way back in the 70s. I even passed the teacher's exam here in North Carolina. My parents were pretty proud of that.